Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into a classic piece by George Hetzel, a master of the American landscape. The painting we'll be recreating today in this Study the Greats episode is called Moonlight Waterfall. It's a stunning representation of light and shadow in a serene nighttime or nocturne setting. And you can see an image of it up toward the top center of the screen. Let's get started. So we have a palette that we're going to set out today that'll include a very limited set of colors, kind of representative of the fact that you don't see a lot of high chroma colors in most nocturne settings. So it'll include initially cadmium red, Van Dyke brown, Payne's gray, and sap green. And we're going to start trying to paint here with this big old ugly brush, and we're painting on a surface that's made up of sketchbook paper right within my sketchbook pad, which has a thin coat of white gesso, which I've allowed to dry. So we're going to mix up a little bit of our paint, and I know the palette's out of view, but trust me, for this particular painting, the palette is not really the important factor here. We're just going to smear a bunch of the paint, which is right now a mixture of Van Dyke brown and Payne's gray, onto the surface, and then we're going to get a nice coat, almost toning this surface on, and we'll wipe it off, and then we'll use a paper towel to demark our values and kind of frame out the painting, the composition of the painting. So George Hetzel is a new artist that I'm covering on the channel here. I've never covered one of his paintings. Don't recall ever actually seeing this painting until recently, but I've been storing all kinds of interesting images and information that I find on some of the social media properties that I follow, hoping to find inspiration for videos like this and also to help me learn and grow as a painter. But George Hetzel, he lived, I guess, from 1826 until 1899. He was a French-born American artist and is regarded as the founder of the scalp-level school of painting. From what I gather so far, that's a largely plein air-based painting school, but hope to learn more over time. Don't know very much even to this point right now. It's a contemporary to the French Barbizon school, though, I do know, based upon the Wikipedia source that I checked into, and of naturalist paintings. And he was also associated with the Dusseldorf School of Painting. So he's born ethnically mixed part of Alsace, France, I believe is how that's pronounced, on January 17th, 1826, and his family spoke primarily German and emigrated to the United States when he was 2 years old. They traveled from their initial port in Baltimore to a neighborhood in Allegheny City or Dutchtown in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So another Pennsylvania-based painter, much like myself, only he is definitely somebody that I would consider a master. And then when we look through his history, Hetzel attended Allegheny City School. He was apprenticed to a local sign and house painter. After 4 years of training, he earned his artisan's apprenticeship. He was painting interior murals of riverboat public rooms and local Pittsburgh saloons. Hetzel's daughter, Lila, also studied art at Pittsburgh at the Pennsylvania Pittsburgh School of Design. George was sent to Kunstakademie Dusseldorf between 1847 and 1849. He studied Da Vinci's chiaroscuro, which is the use of light and dark shadows to heighten depth and drama, which became a signature stroke in his later works. And you could see that if you explore some of his paintings, particularly his portrait work. It's striking, and you could definitely see the impact of that training on his work. So to this point now, with the painting that we've started, you can see I finished the toning. I kind of put some general shapes in, indicating where some of the lighter parts of the painting will be, which is a little bit of a sky portion that's dedicated to the sky and the moonlight. Now I'm going to reinforce some of the darker shapes within the painting using a mixture of Van Dyke Brown with just touches of either sap green, ultramarine blue, or in some cases, Payne's gray as well from time to time. And starting in the foreground, I don't have much of a game plan here. I'm just kind of playing. That's kind of the way I look at these sessions where I cover masterworks. Just looking to explore ways with which I might approach, creating these scenes in my own way, relying a lot on intuition. And ultimately, what I find one of the benefits that I gain from this is really, understanding some of the idiosyncrasies of painting design, and it's really helpful. So, for example, in this case, I'm curious to really understand a little bit better how a painting that is so symmetrical, positioning the moon directly smack dab in the middle of the painting, still allows for some really good movement of the viewer's eye throughout the painting, and also is not lessened in any way by its symmetrical design. It's pretty amazing. A lot of it has to do with the quality of the work itself, and the fact that Hetzel, just his beautiful, beautiful painter quality, painterly quality, and in his work, and brush strokes and color mixing and everything is just sublime. So we're marking in some of the more important shapes here at this point. The line that will ultimately demark where the top of the waterfall is, and the tree line. And we're just making our way through and just kind of making a mess of things. This is how I start most of my paintings, whether I'm painting plein air or in studio. I find, for me personally, the paintings that work out best typically start as a big mess, and then we work our way back, organizing the chaos to the point where it seems like it's better off than where we started. And but anyway, so here we're working our way through. Now I'm just creating some indications of some of the major shapes in the sky amongst the clouds, and we'll keep working. And as we get to some of the points here where it's a little repetitious, I will from time to time jump back into some of the history of this great painter. So Hetzel is thought to have introduced the bucolic setting of scalp level painting at the intersection of Paint Creek and Little Paint Creek, just outside of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, around 1866 during a fishing trip, where he was then an instructor at the Pittsburgh School of Design for Women and encouraged his colleagues and students to make scalp level their summer retreat and work on plein air. So Hetzel exhibited at the National Academy in New York between 1865 and 1882, and at the Pennsylvania Academy until 1891. He was included in the 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia and shown in the first Carnegie International in 1896. He also exhibited at the World's Columbian Exposition 1892 through 1893, and the J.J. Gillespie Gallery sold his works, and he kept an independent studio as well. His career was established before the scalp level works, but they are currently foremost in his legacy, as per Wikipedia. And within his Wikipedia post, there's a couple of examples of works. If you Google or search for his works, you might have better luck than I did, but I don't see a prodigiously voluminous array of works from Hetzel. And I am no historian, but I suspect it probably has something to do with the way with which he worked. He seems to be somebody who worked his paintings to the point of near perfection. jumped out at me when they made the reference to the Da Vinci style training that he went through partway through his career. And, Da Vinci, there's all kinds of quotes out there talking about how he was no gifted than any other artist. He was just more persistent. And along those lines, I feel like the works here that I've been able to find amongst Hetzel's, it definitely suggests that he was aiming for perfection and he was very persistent in that aim. This painting's a really good example. Not my study, of course. This is a little bit of kind of a messy scrumble, but we're going to make the most. And I added ultramarine blue here to the palette, and I'll add one or two additional colors as we go. Reason being is, eventually I'm going to have to incorporate that into some of the shadows, and in addition to that, into the sky, the moonlit sky, as a way of trying to render this painting as a study of a great masterpiece, which includes that type of color as well. I should also caveat all this by saying I have no special insight into the palette that was used by Hetzel to create his painting. Given the time frame, some of the colors on my palette probably didn't exist at the time or were not easily readily available. The cadmium colors, for example, may not have been easily accessible or used. In my case, mainly cadmium red. I'm not sure if Payne's gray would have been something. He probably would have mixed his own grays. But I'm looking to accomplish this study within an hour to 2 hours, and do so in a wet format with none of the layering, scrumbling, or glazing advantages that might come into play for the old masters. So here we go, mixing up some colors. I know it's off screen. We're going to go ahead and start putting in some of the more interesting details into this painting. One of those will be the bluish greenish nighttime sky. We'll start out with a mixture of ultramarine blue and titanium white. Almost looks like a daytime color. And in this case, we have a nearly full moon, which is part of this painting. So the sky is lit up within and amongst the openings within the clouds. So we're going to try and render that. And we'll bring up an image of the original painting from time to time, just so you can make reference to that as we make our way through. So there it is. So total elapsed time for the actual painting as I work through this exercise was about 1 hour and 55 minutes. We have sped up certain sections of the process here just to ensure that this video does not exceed an hour. We're doing that just because trying to put myself into your shoes as the viewer. Listening to my voice and watching my crazy process is something that I would not want to follow for much longer than 50 minutes or so, even if that. So now we're putting or reestablishing some of the cloud shapes. We're trying to go dark and put the darkest valued shapes in to start with, and we'll work our way through. All this is leading up to eventually adding some details to help render the waterfall a little bit more effectively, and then bringing in some of the finer details. All along the way, resisting the urge to jump to that stage. It's really important to focus on putting in the basic shapes and refining the values first, and then pushing those final details off to the very end. It seems like any time that I get into trouble with a painting and find it difficult to finish it off in a way that kind of meets my level of expectation is when I try to jump into those details too soon. So we have that nice blue on there. We're going to go ahead and rub out a little spot here indicating where the moon will reside, again near the middle of the page, at least on the horizontal plane, obviously vertically a little bit higher up, because we're looking down at ground level up at the waterfall, which is kind of at eye level. So far above that, far above the hillside and the tree lines, we see the moon up in the sky, but in the middle of the page. Now, normally that would be a big no-no. You know, in order to maintain any level of interest within a painting's design or composition, you try to put the focal point of the painting, or even the secondary focal point of a painting, or tertiary focal point of the painting, in the middle. But in this case, and that's one of the things I aim to explore here, it works. So we're speeding up the video now, and you'll see me work quite a bit faster because we're moving at about 8 times speed. Sometimes I wish I could move this fast. Sometimes I'm grateful that I can't. And we're putting some additional colors, mixtures of Payne's Gray and Ultramarine Blue, mixtures of Payne's Gray and white, and eventually yellow ochre as well in. And we're working our way around the painting just to try and sustain some level of color harmony and make sure that no one part of the painting, jumps out as being more intense than the other. With regards to chroma, that's particularly important here because colors generally are going to be a little bit more washed out in a nocturne setting. There's less light. So we'll continue to work our way through, and this process will continue for quite some time. We are at this point just under 17 minutes into the painting process, and we have quite a ways to go. So, a little bit, roughly 2/3 of the way to go still at this point. So, all along the way, evaluating values, evaluating chroma, trying to disrupt my familiarity with the painting, and looking back and forth at the original work, and again, trying to intuitively find solutions to every problem that we run into. So, when it comes to my painting practice, I do want to share with you my tendency nowadays, as I kind of sprinkle in some indication of highlights within the clouds, is to really strive to get outside and paint on plein air, and do so, within my local community if possible. Occasionally there's trips down the shore to the beach and that sort of thing. I'll try to take advantage of those as well. But that's where my primary focus is. Every now and again, it's good to get back to this idea of studying the greats because it can help in a number of ways. First of all, it can help you work through problems that you're experiencing in your normal painting practice. 2, it could serve as a nice distraction from maybe the normal routine, and help kind of build energy if you're finding any level of resistance that's difficult to challenge and push back against. And 3, learning about new painters and world-class artists like this one. It always brings a new level of knowledge and expectation, even when you're not able to do anything more than just scratch the surface on a particular character, like in this case, like Hetzel. So I'll keep him on my list, though, and I'll look for additional paintings of his that I might be able to recreate as part of my longer-term series here, Study the Greats. And if I have the opportunity to do so, I'll videotape the process and share it with you. So you can see more details formulating. Starting to use the palette knife here to bring in, some of the details. The spray of the water as it hits the rocks and drapes over the different rock shelves that make up the waterfall. Looking to accentuate the bigger shapes, which really at this point are made up within the waterfall by the reflections coming off of the water. And it's just like anything else. Even though we're dealing with flowing water, painting's really all about shapes and the light that reflects off of them. So trying to keep that in mind as I make my way through. Now back up into the clouds, trying to bring some variance. Don't want these big, blocky, dark shapes. There is a little bit of yellow ochre on my palette now at this point, which I've incorporated a little bit of the Payne's gray, yellow ochre, and titanium white to help lighten up those clouds and push them back a little bit. And that might seem counterintuitive. Normally, yellow ochre would be a warmer color that could pull items within a painting forward, but we have enough Payne's gray and titanium white mixed in where it's having the desired effect. I'm really happy with how that's working out. Working my way back down through the waterfall, incorporating some of that yellow ochre. When water comes over a waterfall, it's hardly ever going to be purely white or even close to it. Lots of times, flowing water will bring with it silt, sand, dirt, algae, and it'll ultimately result in the water looking a little bit of green or tan, and that's what we're trying to accentuate here. I've moved to a smaller brush finally, and here we are, just over 20 minutes in, still less than halfway through the painting, and we're going to walk through a process here where we go back and forth, adding some lights, taking them away with some darks and some neutrals, adding some whites again, hoping to create an illusion where we really get a sense for water spilling over these rock formations, making up this waterfall. And I kind of diverted from the original's format with regards to the treatment of the foreground. The original painting by Hetzel is laid in the foreground at the bottom of the waterfall with darker rocks and stones, a lot of shadowy figures. I inadvertently, almost by accident, just using that bigger palette knife, brought the water and the sparkles within the water all the way forward, all the way to the bottom of the page in the foreground. And I'm thinking I might leave it that way. You can take liberties when you're recreating these master works. It is an exercise, and I view it largely as a playful one. So why not experiment a little bit and just, if something happens by accident that you kind of like, leave it in. What's the harm? And as long as you think about it and use some discernment as you work your way through the process and evaluate your efforts, you're learning something. So why not? It's interesting to note, I haven't been able to find a lot of good information on other scalp level artists, but or what the school actually is notably kind of focused upon. However, I do see a list of other scalp level artists within the Wikipedia page for Hetzel. Associated artists include artists by the name of A.F. King, Clarence Johns, A.E. Poole, Charles Linford, Fred Brusman, A.S. Wall, Joseph Woodwell, Brian Wall, George Lang, C.C. Mallour, John Wesley Beatty, Horatian Stevenson, John Herman Jr., Jeanette Francis Agnew, Anna W. Henderson, Rachel Henderson, Carrie S. Holmes, Annie Christina, Olive Turney, Bessie Wall, Agnes C. Way, and Alfred S. Wall. So I surely will, on my own time, look up those artists and see if I can find any interesting works done by them. I do recognize a few of the names vaguely, particularly Joseph Woodwell. That jumps out at me, and A.E. Poole. I believe I've seen some works of theirs that were quite memorable, but you could always research that on your own too and see what you think. So I'm trying to avoid the normal drive at this point to try and render everything perfectly, giving up control. I want to leave quite a few things to suggestion for the viewer and their brain to interpret, what it is they're seeing. And in hindsight, it might have been best for me to leave this painting where it is right now. And that's one of the benefits of this exercise that I've adopted of videotaping my process. You do get a better sense for different points in different works that you make your way through where you might have overworked it a little bit. And I would say, from my own personal taste, in hindsight, I might stop right here. But you'll see in a few moments, there's some good things that happen too. I just, having had the opportunity to look at the painting, sitting on my desktop at this point in time while I wait for it to dry, and having, watched this video, I just, with my aesthetic kind of preferences, right now it would have been a great time to stop. So we're going to make our way through. I'm using a little detailed bristle brush, which is quite worn. It's been used for probably several hundred paintings at this point in time, and left in a vat that contains a mixture of dish soap and water. So it's lost its shape, and when it dries out, it gets kind of scraggly. So I figured it would be good for the water effects here, and it's doing a pretty good job. So one of the things that I really aim to achieve at some point is to become a really proficient painter of waterfalls. And that is one of the key things that drew me to this painting, because not only is this a wonderful nocturne scene, but I think Hetzel does probably one of the best jobs I've ever seen of capturing a waterfall in a way where you can almost feel the water moving. You can feel the power of the flowing water and the sensibilities of, beautiful evening in the forest, almost as if, I don't know, when I look at this painting, and that's not even looking at the live actual masterpiece on site. This is through photos, so it's even more impressive in that way. I could almost get the sense of how the artist might have felt standing perhaps maybe on rocks or on a small peninsula, viewing the scene at night in the 1800s in what would have been a true wilderness with wildlife all around him. So the ability to evoke those sorts of feelings within a work of art like this is quite the achievement. And to do so with a waterfall scene is extraordinarily difficult if you've ever done it. I've tried painting waterfalls on plein air from photos, combination of the two, reference photos after session on plein air. It's very difficult, and there's a boatload of reasons why. Water itself is difficult to paint, but when you have water in motion, like what you see with a waterfall, it's very dynamic. The light shifts, and it's very easy to end up with something that looks like perhaps maybe somebody tried to recreate the waterfall scene just by cutting and pasting big blocks of chunky white shapes onto their canvas. So I see this as an incredibly important learning opportunity within my own painting practice, and I attacked it here with a lot of vigor and excitement. And I'm hoping that it'll carry over into future efforts to paint waterfalls. We have a lot of them here in northeastern Pennsylvania. You can see that I am shifting back to my palette knife. And I'm going to go ahead and speed up the rest of the video here, just so we can ensure that we keep this to a manageable time frame. I don't want anybody missing an entire lunchtime just to view one of my videos. If that happens to be you, or even if not, even if you've given up at this point, we appreciate you checking out my videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe, perhaps share it with a friend, and hit the like button. That helps the channel, helps us reach more people, and that's really important to artists like me. So we're still making progress here. Now that we've laid down all the major elements, it's time to step back and refine the details. This is where you can fine-tune the lighting and add any additional textures or deepen the shadows to give your painting more depth. And remember, the beauty of painting is that it's your interpretation, how you see the world. So don't be afraid to make it your own, even though in this case, we're studying a great masterpiece. So thanks for checking out my video. I do so appreciate you